Good evening and welcome to Abnormal Alabama, My Haunted Dolls. If you think that we're abnormal, you're right. Here's my favorite face.
Ooh,
Oh.
dude.
Well, another Tuesday night and we're here. And as usual, normally, unless we have a special guest, and that's a rarity in our world because who the hell wants to talk with us? But it does happen occasionally. Some fool comes
Yeah.
along, don't realize who we are. and
Yeah.
But we're going to talk about stalking. And Kevin's been stalking me for going into 4 years now.
I think y'all stalked me first.
Is that Kevin again stalking me? Oh, jeez.
Oh,
But we're going to talk about stalkers, and stalkers can be a scary thing. And we got a lot of, I guess, scary stalking stories. And I'm not, in today's world, you get stalked online. Some people are stalked with texting, the cell phone stalking. Am I stalking you? Scary stories. Have you ever been stalked? And nowadays, have you ever been texted a picture of you somewhere and you didn't know? Scary stuff. Really scary, scary stuff. Really
yeah.
scary. Why is my phone?
Scary.
I need to charge my phone. It's not charging.
Scary. Let's see here. I should go ahead and share these here thingamajigs.
So he, meaning Kevin, is going to start off with his normal talking to the dolls.
Yeah.
Yeah, see, Kevin kind of got confused when he was young because Kevin's a literalist. So when they were talking, the boys would get together and say, "Yes, she's a doll," and he kept, "Oh, you got man, she's a doll. Look at that good looking one. Shit, that's a good looking doll." And he took it literally, so he started collecting dolls, and he thought, "I've got more dolls than any other guy around here," and he didn't realize
that never happened.
See, look at the way he handles that doll. And that doll will make different faces. Watch it.
Yes.
It will make different faces. Look
got
at that.
The happy face.
That's not happy. It's surprised.
And then, let's see. It's a little
That's that doll's version.
Hard to turn now. There it goes.
Look at him twisting the head off of that doll. Yes, I cried.
Yeah, that's crying. There's Kelsey. And then it goes to sleep. Look at that. Kelsey done put it to sleep.
Go to sleep.
And back to a happy face.
You're getting sleepy.
And this is old. It's got a little porcelain
looking up under her dress. Stop that.
I'm showing off her little porcelain legs.
Her man.
No. I'm just showing the doll off.
Yeah. Look here. She's got a honey.
I didn't show off her honey. I was showing how her legs were made. This is a vintage doll. I don't know exactly how old, but I'm guessing maybe 50s or 60s or
I don't know. You can't find out. Why don't we ask?
I don't know. There's no. We could ask her. The clothes are kind of old too, but they're still in good shape.
I think
we're gonna ask her.
So, ladies and gentlemen, Kevin, is there a name for this doll?
I don't have a name. She was
not
a name, and
we're gonna find out.
Was not.
These are very important questions. We're gonna get to the bottom of this tonight.
It was not claimed to be haunted, and I just.
And the reason that you're not getting good feedback, Kevin, you want to answer to this problem?
What problem?
Too much light in your room. Ghosts don't like light. You got to.
What light?
Ask Zach Bagan.
Oh.
You got to turn the light down. Invite the girls.
Now.
And then when I see something behind you there, I'll go.
And when I trip on that rock on the floor, you're like, demon.
And why you have a rock on your floor in the house?
Oh, for some reason, there's always something tripping up Zach. I assume that he has a rock everywhere he goes. We did this in the daylight, and we got good activity. So
You did. Y'all got knocks. We want answers.
I got a little voice too.
We want answers.
Well, the light ain't gonna help it.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
I turned the light off. It's gonna be dark in here. You won't be able
Do
to
you
see
have your rim rod?
my rim rod. I have a rim pod.
Oh, that's what it is. The Ouija board pod.
Yeah. Seeing the light eyes.
Oh,
Ooh, look at there.
already
Ooh.
acting up. Already acting up.
Ooh, because
Oh,
I'm
that's
touching
got
it.
canvas flame.
Ooh. Ooh, look at there.
All right.
Ah.
Well, get your app going and let's do this thing.
Okay.
Wait a
Go
minute.
ahead.
First
What?
things first, you got to talk about your new book.
Oh, the new book, which
Not the
is out
new book,
now.
the new book.
Ah, I know what you mean. Where's that picture? There it is. This new book, Dark Awakening and Other Tales for a Midnight Hour. And I've already sold a couple of copies, so get yours today at myhauntedolls.com, just like this here bumper sticker says. myhauntedolls.com, and get your autographed copy of these are original fictional scary stories right there. And while you're at, you can snag the other books here. My Haunted Doll collection, The Dark Side.
My
You
only
can get one
question.
of my supernatural novels like Crimson the Blood Painting. And if for some reason you just too scared to go on myhauntedolls.com and buy it, it's on Amazon and Kindle.
Mm-hmm.
And this book is in hardback too. I've got my paperbacks, but they said it's going to be end of March before I get my hardbacks. So, shall I go ahead with the?
Got to get it. I'm going to shrink myself so you can get more space to work with.
Okay. So, I'm going to go ahead and open this up here. And we're going to use the necrophonic. Let me make sure I cut this thing up. Necrophonic. Let's get this started. Oh, I heard a whispered yes. This is Kevin, and I'm here with a brand new doll in my. Okay, two little voices said dad back to back. Hey. I'm getting some hays and highs. My name is Kevin, and I'm wondering, is there somebody with this little doll here on my table? Does this doll, hello? Does this doll have a spirit with it? If there is, or any spirit that might be here, tell me your name. My name is Kevin. I heard a whispered Jacob. Can you let us know you're here by going over here to this? This looks like a skull, but it's not. It's just a toy. If you touch the metal part, it'll light up. Can you see if you can touch that and light it up? Hi. I still hear a little child's voice. Is this your doll? What is your doll's name? Yeah, it's a girl. What is the girl's name? just for fun, I've put your little doll in there in that little doll case with the light inside it. And of course, it's where you can come and go. But I think your doll looks awesome with that light on it at night. Do you like your case? Or your box, if you want to call it that? It's neat, yeah. A very nice lady made that glass box. It's really nice. Got that light on top. It shines down on your doll. I should have brought that in here, but I was afraid I'd knock it over and break it. So do you want to play with this toy? Just touch the antenna and watch those eyes light up. It's not scary. It's just fun. Don't be scared of it. It lights up and makes that funny noise. Does this doll belong to you? Is it one of my other dolls that belong to you? I'm just wondering, does this doll have a spirit with it? Yeah. How old is the spirit? Did you say 5? Ghost. Doll. Hi. What is your name? My name's Kevin. What's yours? So where are you from? This doll shipped to me from Phoenix City, Alabama. Is that where you're from? Excuse me. So she came from Phoenix, Alabama, Phoenix City, Alabama, from a nice seller. Do you know that seller? Or I should say previous owner. Nah. Well, now I'm getting a yes. How many spirits are with this doll? Party. I heard you say party. Are you looking for a party? School. A lot of different words coming through here. Did you go to school around here? I'm going to change hands with this camera because it camera is killing my hand. Who does this doll belong to? Are you a human spirit? Are you a child? Well, we got a couple of minutes here. Do you have anything you'd like to tell us? I'd love to hear from you. What would you like to say? Did you say burn and serious? Did you get burned? Did you get burned? Where did you get burned? It's kind of going quiet now. Sorry if I brought up a sore subject. Are you happy now? Be good. Well, I try to be good all the time. So what would you like to tell us? Tell us about yourself. I hear a little laughter. Are you from Alabama? Do you have any favorite things to do? What's your favorite thing to do? Thought I heard pray in there. I heard a little kid laugh.
Yep.
Yeah, I like to pray every day too for protection and forgiveness and all those good things. Can you see God where you are? I think we'll all see him someday. We're about to come to an end of our session. Is there anything you'd like to say? Speak now or hold your peace. I've heard a little child's voice several times there, speaking lightly, so I wonder if there may be a child who's attracted to the doll, maybe came around to check it out. Well, this has been the Necrophonic Spirit Box session, and we're about to wrap it up. Any last words you'd like to say? Okay, who was talking roughly there?
And
What would you like to tell us before we stop? All right, we're going to go ahead and bring this to a stop here. So for any spirits that don't belong here, you need to back off, go back to where you came from, and all spirits back away. I'm going to count down from 5, so go ahead and back away. Thank you. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Thank you. Goodbye. There we go. So I think there just might be a spirit or two there with that doll, or at least a couple of spirits out there who like it and decide to come check it out.
Check it out.
Yeah, check it out.
Check it out. Check it out.
Always
Friends.
something here to check out.
Well, so we are. My phone. Have you ever had your phone just all of a sudden, like, not charging?
Not charging? I hadn't had.
When I first plug it in, it starts charging, then it stops. I don't care where I plug it into. It's like I've never had this problem, and now it's like, what?
I don't think I've had that. The other night I had a message pop on when I thought I had it plugged in, but apparently the plug was loose, and it
No,
told me it said check your plug before charging.
I plugged it in different plugs, different places. It'll start. It shows it started, and within a second, it stops
Ah,
charging. I don't have a clue. I guess I'm going to do some research on that.
Well, better go ahead and research today.
Well, the only issue I have is business,
Yeah.
weddings and whatnot. It's all on this phone. It's like, God.
That sounds like a good title. Weddings and whatnot.
Yeah. Weddings and whatnot. Jesus. Well, we're talking about stalking. I wonder if I'm being stalked here. Is what the problem is.
Oh, no, maybe it is.
I don't know how.
Maybe that's what the problem is.
So let's see. This
Could
is a
you be?
Samsung.
Could you be stalked? Bum 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 bum. Stalker.
Stalker.
Stalker. All kinds of stalkers out there. Cyber stalkers, psycho stalkers. Automated stalkers that call you all day.
And yeah, we got them, don't we? Huh?
Yeah, we got it.
We got them.
Stalkers to the left, stalkers to the right.
Okay, it says the battery's good. It's working
Uh-oh.
normally. We got an issue with the charging. So I don't know. I'm going to try and reboot.
Welcome to Bixby.
I don't want to do Bixby. I don't want to do Bixby.
I get that Bixby. What is that another?
It's like a boy talking to your phone, like.
Yeah, kind of like Siri and.
Yeah, Siri's. I think I have. Yeah. So, and Siri and all. What's the one on Amazon? Alexa.
Yeah, Alexa. Yeah.
So I mean, those are stalking instruments. I'm convinced. How in the world do you want something in your house that you can talk to that's going to get all over the internet? Isn't that kind of spooky and it kind of weird?
Yeah.
I mean, think about it. I know people's got it. I never got it. I like techie stuff, but that was kind of like, ooh, hey Alexia, play Bohemian Rhapsody. He's just really? Are you kidding me?
Hey,
Alexia, what time is it? 3:45 p.m. That's just a little bit weird.
Alexa's been known to say some scary things, and
you
Siri
watch
too.
Some of those stuff too, huh? Yeah.
Yeah.
They got them on TikTok and YouTube both.
There was one where it just all of a sudden cut on and started laughing like ha 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 ha, and then another one cut on another time during the night.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody's Siri or whichever cut on and it just cut on and suddenly said, "Sometimes I feel just like dying inside myself," or something like that. Just some creepy. we could do an episode on that all by itself. Where creepy things Alexa says.
Creepy. This is the same place I charge this. Anyway, I'm getting distracted because my phone is freaking me out.
Yeah, I was finishing up sharing here.
Everything internally on the phone says it's working properly, but I've tried 2 different cords. And I don't know. If it wasn't for business purposes, I wouldn't care. But my money's tied into the phone number.
Money tied in.
You know the money thing.
I got money. Lots and lots of money. All right.
So we're stalking.
And
we got George Ghost Hunter is with us.
Yeah. We just got done. You have to go back to the beginning and see about my new doll here. It sounds like it may be haunted or have a ghost hanging around it.
And we're about to doll.
Yeah, Georgia the Ghost Hunter. Hi, Georgia. Georgia says I've just stayed at what's that? Craignos Castle in South Wales.
So that charge is not even indicating.
I don't know if I've heard of that castle.
This is just weird.
And Kelsey's having problems with his phone there, so.
This is not right. This is scaring me. Oh well. I'll not be able to I'll have to go to AT&T tomorrow and say, help.
No.
I need somebody's help in any way.
I do have a cyber stalker story already up here that about somebody's been
Well,
going
why
through
don't
this
you
for a
run with
while.
that real quick?
Okay. This is called I've Had a Cyber Stalker Since I Was 12. And let us throw up here a good cyber stalker scary photo there. There you go. Too bad that I know we had some music background, but too bad we don't have any that's creepy. Let's see here. Let's see, is this creepy here? There we go. Ooh. Early one evening last March, my best friend saw my name pop up in a text notification on her phone. The message, which appeared to come from my Gmail account, read, "Felt a bit sad today about how I never made any friends at Emory during my time there. Not one. God, I'm a loser. All I've got is my hair, LOL." End quote. She called me as soon as she got home from work and asked, "Are you okay?" I answered, "What? Yeah, everything's fine." She told me about the text, but even as she spoke, we realized what had happened. "Ugh," I said, "it's Danny." My cyber stalker had struck again. This time with a spot-on impersonation of me and my neurosis. Danny, not his real name by the way, has stalked and harassed me online and off for almost 15 years, more than half my life at this point. He has used a variety of methods to do so: phone, text, email, Facebook, and other social media. Updating his tactics with every advance in technology. In the last 3 years, he has also sent dozens, possibly hundreds, of defamatory letters, emails, Facebook, and Twitter messages about me to my family, friends, employers, professional organizations, and political offices, including the State Attorney General of New York. I know because he sent me copies of the letters. By now, I was used to ignoring Danny's harassment and advising others to do the same. But this was different. More serious than what I had endured before. It looked like Danny had stolen my identity and was now posing as me to my friends online. Had he hacked my accounts? I was terrified of the havoc he could cause with my personal information suddenly at his disposal. I immediately called Apple and started digging through Google's help pages to figure out what had happened. It turned out my accounts were secure and Danny had not actually hacked anything. I changed my passwords anyway. He was spoofing my email using a software program that let him impersonate me online. Spoofing is very easy to do and is often used in phishing scams. Since he was using a third-party system, Apple could not stop him. Neither could Google. If I wanted to end Danny's extended campaign to make my life miserable once and for all, I'd have to figure out how myself. Danny and I met at camp in 2001 when I was 12, and he was a couple years older. We became friends and would talk occasionally during the school year. Our conversations frequently involved me reading him excerpts from Cosmopolitan's Guide to Horoscopes, a book I was obsessed with at the time. But soon he was calling practically every day, and I started ignoring his calls, finding it easier to ghost as a self-centered teen than confront him directly. He didn't take the hint, and I eventually blocked his number. Like everyone in the early aughts, I was a devoted user of AOL Instant Messenger, and at some point must have given Danny my screen name. We chatted on AIM on and off through high school until I blocked him there too. When I got a Facebook account in 2006, he found me again, and not wanting to be rude, I accepted his friend request. He often sent me rambling accounts of his day-to-day life. I usually did not respond, but sometimes I messaged back if I was bored or lonely. I didn't think much of Danny's behavior until one evening during my sophomore year of college. I was leaving the library when I saw Danny standing outside. He handed me the latest Red Hot Chili Peppers CD and asked if we could eat dinner together. I panicked. I had not seen Danny since middle school and did not want to see him now. But I also did not want to hurt his feelings and felt touched by his gift. I took him to the cafeteria and made awkward conversation until I faked an excuse for myself and left. After that incident, I cut off contact, figuring his fixation would dwindle with time. But his Facebook messages only seemed to increase. An almost daily barrage of friendly, if disjointed missives responding to my status updates or providing commentary on his political beliefs, job hunt, and other aspects of his life. The last time I talked to Danny was in 2012. His messages had ramped up to a maniacal rate. Every few hours for about 3 days straight, unreciprocated with no end in sight. I caved and sent him a message asking him to please stop messaging me so much or I would block him. Okay, good luck on your quest, he wrote back. 3 minutes later. I thought, that was easy. Then he sent 3 more angry messages in quick succession, and I blocked him on Facebook. That's when everything changed. Instead of his typical ramblings, Danny started calling me names, insulting my, quote, Jewish nose, and making thinly veiled threats to ruin my career. I filtered out his emails and blocked his text messages, but some communications always managed to slip through as Danny contrived new usernames and methods to harass me. In 2013, he sent my parents a letter detailing his recent activities. Quote, a number of federal government agencies in D.C. and New York City, in addition with a number of journalism associations, have been contacted to maintain the integrity of internet communication, to uphold ethical journalistic responsibilities, and uphold ethics in the journalism industry, he wrote. If this incident ruined Ronnie Jacobson's career in journalism, that is personally not my responsibility, and she will have to deal with the consequences from her actions, end quote. Later, I got emails from him telling me he had submitted formal complaints to the FTC and the FCC, as well as both agencies' official responses to him. He also contacted the New York State Attorney General. Quote, you sure did create a bad reputation with federal government. Please use words on the internet responsibly, he wrote in one email to me. I really fear for you in journalism because you could get a lot of legal trouble. Your reputation is not the best, end quote. He surely menaced obscurely in one way or another. I was now fielding multiple inquiries about him each month, from employers, acquaintances, friends, and others. I'd explain the situation and advise them to block and ignore his messages. Most people were understanding, but it was embarrassing to explain, especially to employers I was trying to impress. 2 years passed before I finally decided to take legal action in late 2014. Maybe it seems weird that I waited so long. Friends and family had been encouraging me to go to the police for years. But by that point, I regarded Danny as an annoying fact of life, the hole dwelling rodent in a decade plus game of whack a mole. And anyway, I didn't want to get Danny in trouble. He obviously had a problem and would likely be better served by therapy than jail time, I thought. Besides, I had my doubts about the police. A few months earlier, I had watched as a couple of officers successfully dissuaded my neighbor from reporting the physical assault she had suffered at the hands of her boyfriend. If they would not acknowledge the bruises that covered her arms, neck, and legs, then I did not have much confidence in their ability to see what Danny was doing to me. But impersonating me by spoofing my accounts was just too much. Danny had also started harassing my friend My3, probably after intuiting our best friend status via social media. He sent spoofed emails calling her ugly and a slut, while pretending to be me or one of our mutual friends. She got messages alerting her he was trying to hack into her Gmail and social media accounts. Someone, likely Danny, sent her an anonymous email using a service called Gorilla Mail, with what was written, "Ronnie Jacobson is not your friend," in the subject line. The body of the email said, "Who do you think is harassing you on the net?" In another message to My3 that showed up as a text on her phone, apparently sent from my email address, he urged her to, quote, "put up more photos on Facebook, please. I'm bored," end quote. I had to find a way to end this before it escalated yet again. With Apple and Google unable to help, I started consulting the numerous guides for cyber stalking victims available online. I felt guilty for waiting so long, like I'd been lazy, and my friends had suffered because of my inaction. But as I read, I learned that my non-response had not been entirely off base. According to the online guides like those provided by advocacy groups working to halt abuse online and the Stalking Resource Center, after clearly telling the cyber stalker or harasser to stop, quote, "do not engage," is rule number 1. But if the cyber stalking escalates or persists, the next step is to report the crime to the relevant authorities. Who exactly are those authorities? Well, no one's entirely sure. Since Danny had used the U.S. Postal Service to harass me over state lines, I figured it was the feds. I filed a complaint with IC3, the FBI's Cybercrime Reporting Center. A few seconds later, after filing, I got an email reading, quote, "This is the only reply you will receive from the IC3. Because we receive thousands of complaints per week, we cannot reply to every complaint received or to every request for updates," end quote. In a somewhat ironic turn, a couple weeks later, Danny notified me via email that he had filed an IC3 report against me. Next up was the police. According to the Department of Justice Guide for Victims of Cyberstalking, which I ended up consulting frequently, a few days after filing with IC3, I gathered together physical copies of some of the letters Danny had sent, including to the New York Attorney General, and headed to my local precinct. I had done hours of research in preparation for this moment, and I felt confident as I walked into the building. "I'm being harassed," I announced to the cop at the window, and stalked, mostly online. Loud snickering from my left. "Is it him?" asked the cop in front of me, flicking his thumb at his colleague giggling in the corner. I narrowed my eyes at the second cop but did not say anything. I informed the officer at the window that I would like to file a police report and launched into a short version of the tale, including Danny's latest identity theft. The officer, who looked a little like Terrence Howard and seemed more understanding than his colleague in the corner, stopped me short. "None of what you described is a crime," he told me. I was blown away. "None of it?" I asked. "Over the past 3 years? What about stalking?" And I showed him the letters. "Had you ever been sexually intimate with this guy?" he asked. I must have looked offended because he quickly explained that he was only trying to help. "I'm just asking routine questions that will make it possible to file a report. There's just not a crime here," he said again. "Defamation? Identity fraud?" I tried. He told me no. "Were you ever afraid of for your life?" he asked, still apparently on my side. "No," I scoffed. After that, his whole demeanor changed. When it became apparent I was not shaking in my boots, he turned his attention to the line of people building up behind me. I realized my mistake quickly. I mean, he's definitely threatened my reputation," I said, in a feeble attempt to backtrack, but not good enough. In the end, I asked him 3 times if he was sure Danny had to have threatened me physically. He said yes each time. I told him I might have some physically threatening messages, but I'd have to look for them, and retreated to an orange plastic chair against the opposite wall. I scrolled through my Facebook messages on my phone, but since I had blocked Danny, they were impossible to locate that way. Meanwhile, as I sat scrolling, several people came up to the reporting window with problems that seemed much more serious and immediate than mine, including a woman who was being followed in real life. I wondered what I was even doing at the precinct and told the cop I'd have to look for the messages at home and come back. He asked me to return with printouts. Although I had walked in calm and collected, I left the station feeling silly and close to tears. I felt stupid and ashamed that I'd allowed myself to be pushed around, but after walking a couple of blocks, the lump in my throat exploded in anger. I was being punished for not acting scared enough. But why should I be scared? Late one night, weeks prior, I'd wondered whether Danny might try to find me in person, like that time in college, so I had looked up the psychology of stalkers online. Of the 5 types of stalkers, Danny seemed to be the kind most likely to persist over years, even decades, but least likely to escalate to violence. And indeed, when I later sifted through everything I'd ever gotten from Danny, I could not find any threats of physical violence. It just wasn't his thing. Danny was more threatening. He was more into threatening my livelihood. The worst he'd ever done was call me a bitch 2 years ago, but while I didn't feel in immediate physical danger, I was emotionally distraught and concerned about Danny's attempts to damage my reputation. The cop may have not bought my story, but I was not convinced that his interpretation of the situation was correct. So I decided to look up the statute. From the New York Penal Code, cyberstalking is defined as likely to cause such person to reasonably fear that his or her employment, business, or career is threatened, where such conduct consists of appearing, telephoning, or initiating communication or contact at such person's place of employment or business, and the actor was previously clearly informed to cease that conduct. I was disappointed, if not surprised, that the police were wrong. Perhaps I was naive. When I called Danielle Citron, a law professor at the University of Maryland and author of the book Hate Crimes in Cyberspace, a few days later, I learned that most cyberstalking victims have similar experiences when they go to the police. "We have this big education deficit in law enforcement," she told me. "Local police are not educated or trained on cyberstalking law, and often misunderstand it and are intimidated by the technology. Even in the rare cases when police recognize that a crime has occurred, officers don't know how to investigate. Sometimes cops react with undisguised hostility, but most of the time they simply shrug off complaints as no big deal or imply that people who report cyberstalking should be flattered by the attention. But cyberstalking is a big deal, and I'm far from the only victim. A Pew survey from 2014 found that 1 in 4 young women report having been stalked online. Men can be victims of cyberstalking too, but the majority of victims are women who tend to experience particularly severe harassment online, according to the survey. Just about everyone has been name-called or subject to some other sort of verbal abuse online, but women are the predominant targets of sexual harassment and the sustained abuse that constitutes cyberstalking, typically considered the most serious form of internet harassment. Women have been growing more vocal about the treatment they receive online, in particular about threats of violence. Violinist Mia Masumia, for instance, recently documented 10 years worth of sexual harassment and threats from strangers, mostly via her Instagram. Cyberstalking is different from the abuse Masumia experienced. Instead of one-off trolling comments, cyberstalking describes a pattern of behavior intended to harass and intimidate over an extended period of time. Most cyberstalking victims also know their stalker, who may be anything from an acquaintance to a former romantic partner, and who often sabotages the target's reputation as a way to exert control over the victim. I checked the DOJ's online resource for cyberstalking victims again, but after contacting the police, the only thing left to do was to keep a thorough record of all future communications. Was I just supposed to live with this for the rest of my life, accumulating box after box of thorough records that no one would ever act on? With the local police not up to the case, I decided to return to the FBI, but contacting them turned out not to be so easy. After persisting through a chain of holds and transfers, I finally got an email address. Via email, a rep told me that the FBI does not have anything for you on cyberstalking and directed me to the IC3 annual report. I scanned its pages and found categories for harassment, identity theft, business email compromise, and other behaviors that could conceivably constitute cyberstalking, but not cyberstalking itself. When I asked about this seeming oversight, a rep told me via email a couple of days later, IC3 does not collect specific statistics on cyberstalking. Any complaint that we would have fall under harassment or extortion. After an extended exchange, I secured a limited interview entirely on the FBI's terms, but the next day the FBI backed out. Unfortunately, due to resource limitations, they said, we cannot update your request. Further emails went unanswered. It seemed I'd hit another dead end. Frustrated, I called up Mary Ann Franks, a professor at the University of Miami School of Law and an expert on cybercrime. She saw my experience as a part of a broader pattern in law enforcement. There's a very long history of trivializing the harms that are done to women specifically, Franks said. That includes everything from domestic assault to rape to stalking. The first anti-stalking legislation passed in California in 1990, after a series of grisly cases ending in murder, raised public awareness about the crime. Within 3 years, all 50 states had anti-stalking laws, and in the early 2000s, states began updating their laws to add cyberstalking. Stalking laws across the U.S. are uneven. New York, where I live, has some of the better anti-stalking legislation in the country. So does Florida, but others offer only piecemeal protections. Federal law under the Violence Against Women Act is more inclusive and, in fact, would cover practically every instance of cyberstalking reported, multiple experts told me. But while the federal cyberstalking law is stronger, the response is not any better. In fact, it may be worse. Citron told me during our phone call, between 2010 and 2013, the FBI prosecuted only 10 cyberstalking cases out of an estimated 2.5 million. Franks explained to me that many people just don't believe cyberstalking is real. Those who do recognize it tend to blame the victim or offer minimal solutions. You still hear even federal officers say, just close your computer and just get offline. These dismissive attitudes are pervasive throughout all levels of law enforcement. In recognition of this state of affairs, in December, the Office of Violence on Women, a branch of the DOJ, issued a statement calling out gender bias in policing of sexual assault and domestic violence is a serious problem in law enforcement. Gender bias often manifests as police officers misclassifying or underreporting crimes, inappropriately jumping to conclusions and labeling sexual assault cases unfounded, and generally failing to recognize domestic violence and sexual assault as crimes. The DOJ included guidelines for reducing gender bias, the first one being for cops to identify that a problem exists at all. Doing so involves educating officers about the real and quantifiable harm of cyberstalking. For Franks, a big theme is that the fundamental feeling of security that most people take for granted is taken away. She has spoken to hundreds, maybe thousands of victims in her research who describe constant feelings having to look over one's shoulder that keep them from engaging fully in their lives, online or off. Then there's the often significant financial toll. More than half of stalking victims lost 5 or more days of work from having to deal with their stalkers' interferences, according to Justice Department statistics. Many cyberstalkers try to commit economic sabotage against their target by spamming their boss with negative emails, for example, or posting defamatory statements or sexually explicit photos online. In a classic case of cyberstalking reported earlier this February, for example, a man created a website for the sole intent of destroying his ex-wife's reputation, alleging she is a drug addict, child abuser, and white supremacist, and telling local news he would only stop when she is dead or destitute and homeless. The FBI and Canadian authorities, the ex-husband lives in British Columbia, declined to prosecute the man in part because they decided the woman could not reasonably be afraid for her physical safety. Similar to what the police told me in my case. But why is it necessary for a person to have been afraid for a crime to have occurred? Researchers and advocates have widely challenged the fear requirement as gender biased, as stalking, predominantly a crime against women, is the only crime contingent on the emotional response of the victim. Many state cyberstalking laws in the U.S. still require the victim fear their stalker physically. As of its last update in 2013, the Federal Violence Against Women Act does not. But despite federal law and the Office of Violence on Women's stated mission of eliminating gender bias in law enforcement, the DOJ still uses the same outdated definition of cyberstalking, which, according to their website, stipulates that a victim must fear the perpetrator. When I called up the DOJ to ask why I could not get a satisfactory response, and in a conversation on background only, an OVW rep told me in short that the office's main objective around stalking and cyberstalking is defining the crime and making sure it is reported and logged accurately. That seemed as good a segue as any. I asked about the OVW's response to potential gender bias in their own definition of cyberstalking, as well as the FBI's failure to track cyberstalking incidences. She requested I submit those questions in writing, which I did a couple hours later, but despite multiple follow-ups, I've yet to receive an answer. Getting blown off by federal government was becoming something of a pattern. Meanwhile, I was still getting messages from Danny. Like most people who stalk and harass online, he likely has more than one target. Danny has mentioned at least 2 other women to me over the years, and I suspect he has stalked them too. Not long ago, my dad called to tell me he had been contacted by a lawyer who represented Danny. The lawyer had apologized for his client's behavior and asked that we notify him if Danny ever attempted to contact me or anyone connected to me in the future. I emailed the lawyer back, but due to attorney-client privilege, he would not reveal the nature of his representation of Danny. I assumed, however, that he was being sued by another victim. Women have had the most success in bringing their tormentors to justice in exactly this way, in court. But in those cases, the threats have tended to be violent. This other victim might have seen a different, more physically threatening side of Danny, or maybe she will help extend cyberstalking case law into nonviolent crimes too. Perhaps, no thanks to my own efforts with law enforcement, from local police up to the DOJ, my saga is finally approaching an end. But when will we recognize that fear should not be a prerequisite for justice? I was never physically afraid of Danny and never will be. That fact does not negate my experience or make his actions any less damaging. I don't need the law questioning whether I feel scared enough. I just need my voice to be heard. Ooh-wee.
Whew. What a
That
story.
went longer than I thought it was going to go. Let me get the picture
Get that
back.
picture out of my face. There you go.
Ah, get your face out of my face. Ah.
That was a lengthy story. There.
It
That's
was 30
probably
minutes.
the lengthiest story you ever shared.
Whew, I don't know, but yeah, I guess so. Whew.
Well, let's talk about
Oh,
a little kid getting stalked here, 10-year-old. And this is
okay.
told as from the 10-year, well, at the 10-year later in life. So here we go. My turn at
Your turn.
in the evening time. So a week or so before my 10th birthday, I walked to the corner store with a $5 bill to pick up a jar of ragu for my mom. On my way home, a man I'd never seen before fell in step with me and began talking. "Hi," he said cheerfully. "My name is Dr. Ramsey. I'm a pediatrician. Do you know what a pediatrician is?" I walked along silently, not replying, and fervently hoping he would take that as a sign he should leave me alone. Subtleties were not his strong suit, though, because he kept right on chattering. "Are your parents looking for a pediatrician for you? Of course, you're almost a big girl now. You'll be needing another kind of doctor soon, won't you? That's okay, though. They can still bring you to me until then. What's your name? You have beautiful hair. I was just on my way to get some suckers for the candy jar in my office. Do you like suckers?" Thankfully, we were nearing my house, so I ran forward up the back steps and into through the kitchen door. I didn't know it then, but that was the beginning of a very long, very scary ordeal. It didn't take long after that for Dr. Ramsey to begin showing up. At first, he seemed benign enough, at least to a kid. He would drive by nearly every day, smiling and waving. I told my mom, who said maybe it was on his way home from work. But then the phone calls began. My dad called me into the living room and set me down. He asked about the day Dr. Ramsey followed me home, and I talked to him. And if I talked to him, he said I wasn't in any trouble, but that I needed to tell him the truth. I told him no, and he asked if I was sure. Could I have been forgetting something? I told him no again. And he frowned and then said, "Then how does he know your name?" I didn't know. It turns out that wasn't all he knew. He knew my sister's name too. Pretty soon, neither my sister or I were allowed to answer the phone. He called several times a day. At first, neither of us knew what he was saying. Then one night, one of my brothers told us that he was telling my parents that he was going to hurt me and later my sister. Things got complicated after that. My dad had called the police, but as this was before there were any stalking laws, sounds like Kevin's story, there was not a lot they could do. They told my parents to call back if he tried anything. Well, my dad then called a friend of his from back in the city who happened to be a cop. For the next month, my dad's friend escorted me to and from school. Suddenly, life as I knew it came screeching to a halt. I couldn't walk to school alone. I couldn't play outside. I couldn't walk to Super America, sort of like a 7-Eleven for those who don't know. When access to me was completely denied, things escalated. It was around this time he began threatening my sister as well. Then one afternoon, my sister, two of my brothers, my mom, and I were in the kitchen. One of my brothers saw a glimpse of someone in the garage. They'd seen him too. Dr. Ramsey came bolting out of the garage, my brothers chasing after him. They ran all the way to Cherokee Park where he lost them in the trees. Our parents called the police again, but nothing came of it. The only information they had was a description and a name that was almost certainly fake. A couple of weeks later, we woke to find our dog hanging from the side porch. She was a gorgeous saddleback German Shepherd, born the same day I was. We were devastated. The cops said there was no evidence it was him and ruled it accidental. But none of us believed that. His phone calls became more informative in the meantime. He would talk about who was home and who wasn't. If my brother would say my dad was home, he would tell me he was really in the house. He also would talk about the house itself, about the window in the kitchen. Could easily open with a knife from the outside, even when it was locked, and about the French doors that connected the living room to the side porch and how the lock could be finagled from the outside if you jiggled it just right. That night, my dad put in some carpenter nails at the bottom of the French doors until he could get a new lock ordered. My parents had to go to a company event for my dad's work. My older brothers were at Saints West roller skating rink. My sister was on the phone with her best friend. My little brother was on the floor asleep. I was watching Devo on the midnight special with Wolfman Jack. It was late. Suddenly, the top of the French door swung inward, and in the few milliseconds before the nails in the bottom caused them to snap back, I could see a silhouette. My sister whipped the phone at the television, and we ran up the stairs. About halfway up, we realized our little brother was still asleep on the living room floor, and quietly as we could, we slipped back down the stairs to get him. We all went into our bedroom and didn't turn on the light. This way we could see outside. We watched out the window for a while, and when we didn't find him, we crept down the hall to our brother's room to look. We looked down and could see someone standing at the back door. He knocked loudly. "What do you want?" my sister asked out the window. He stepped back and said, "Is this the Mercy residence? I have a pizza for delivery. Can you come to the door?" She scoffed at him, declaring she was not stupid. She could see he didn't have a pizza. She was calling the cops. He left. A short while later, my brothers returned home. We told them what happened, and they walked around the yard watching for him. They came back in, and things settled down. By now, we'd pretty much given up calling the cops because it never helped. So we just went back in, each of us except my youngest brother, still asleep, carrying a knife from the kitchen just in case. Eventually, one of my brothers went into the kitchen to get a bowl of cereal as a snack. You know that sensation you get when you can just feel someone watching you? Yep, he had that in spades. He kept looking around the kitchen, through the doorway into the dining room, at the windows. He didn't see anything, but he could still feel eyes on him. So he went closer to the door to try to see better. The kitchen lights were reflecting on the window of the door. It had 3 rows of 3 windows, so he still couldn't see. He stepped closer, then closer again, until he was right up to the door, then cupped his hands on either side of his head so he could see. There, on the other side of the window's pane, was Dr. Ramsay, smiling back at him. He turned to yell for my older brothers, and when he looked back again, he was gone. They went out again to look for him, but didn't see him. The next night, we were at the table playing Crazy Eights, and my brother was restless. My sister asked him what's wrong, and he said he always felt like any minute there'd be a boom, boom, boom on a door or window. Almost immediately after he finished his sentence, boom, boom, boom on the window right behind him. In the chaos, the 2 elders ran out, but he was already gone. A couple of weeks later, I was at school and we were outside on the playground during recess. I was swinging upside down when I saw that now familiar blue Ford Galaxy cruising by, moving slowly. There he was, smiling and waving. He called my name. I ran to the teacher and told her. The school had been told all about him, and she took me inside right away and called my mom. That same day, my mom had gotten a phone call from the school office asking her to verify that my dad was picking me up, as he had called to say he was on his way. He wasn't. Not long after that, I woke up one night thirsty. I went down to the kitchen for a drink, and there, sitting alone in the dark, was my dad. On the table, a gun. He was tired of the police waiting until Dr. Ramsay tried something. He was tired of his children being terrorized. He was tired of being afraid every time he left for work that something would happen to us while he was gone. I sat with him for a time, watching before he sent me back to bed. These events and many more took place over a period of about 18 months. Then, as suddenly as it began, it was over. He had vanished from our lives, the phone calls, the drive-by with the creepy waves, everything. For a long time during and after Dr. Ramsay's days, I would have a recurring nightmare in which I would wake up to find him standing over me as I slept. It took a long time before I felt like a kid again. I found out years later that when he was calling, Dr. Ramsay would tell my parents that he was going to rape and kill me and later my sister, and that there was nothing they could do about it. I don't know what happened to him when he disappeared. I don't know if he was in a car wreck, locked in prison, in a coma, but sometimes I wonder if the wait ended for my dad when he was sitting in the darkened kitchen one night. I don't know, and I'm not sure I want to. Do you think Dad killed him? What do you think?
I don't know what to think. Maybe old Papa
Papa,
Doe killed him.
take care of the baby.
I've got a really freaky stalker story. This one's short. It's not long like the last one.
Oh, yeah.
I've been talking for 30 minutes.
40 minutes. I got a 40-minute story for you here. Tell you what, Karen, I'm getting a nap.
Let's see if we recognize this house. It's not Amityville. It's called the Watcher House.
Gotta watch them watchers.
The Westfield Watcher. This is a pretty freaky true life incident here.
You've got to watch them watchers.
Yeah. A house in Westfield, New Jersey has achieved notoriety in the last decade as a house not only haunted, but also watched by someone with anonymity.
Uh,
The house was built in 1905 and remodeled in 2014. Various families inhabited the house throughout the decades. The old Dutch colonial house is described as a real estate dream, hosting 6 bedrooms, a master suite, wood floors, and numerous fireplaces. Derek and Maria Brado bought the newly remodeled home, with high hopes in 2014, never expecting the fear and drama that would ensue for a whopping $1.3 million. Shortly after the purchase, the family began to receive chilling letters in their mailbox by someone claiming to watch the house, as the house had been, quote, according to the stalker, quote, the subject of their family for decades, unquote, and that they were put in charge and watching and waiting for its second coming, as he put it. The first letter asked the question, why are you here? I will find out. Each letter was signed The Watcher. He claimed that his grandfather looked over the house in the 1920s, his father in the 1960s, and now it was his turn. The Watcher claimed to always be keeping an eye on the house and on the family. He said in another letter, all the windows and doors allow me to watch you and track you as you move through the house. He made references to the children of the family and threatened them, saying, and now I watch and wait for the day when their young blood will be mine again. The letters poured in, each one more and more disturbing. One of them asked if the owners were, quote, able to fill the house with the young blood I requested, end quote, and claimed to know the names of the family's children. He said, and the other letter, he said, I am pleased to know your names now and the name of the young blood you have brought me. The Watcher claimed to one day call the children out by their names and lure them into the woods. He said, once I know their names, I will call to them and draw them to me. I asked the wood's prior owners to bring me young blood too. More than one letter insinuated that there was something to be found in the walls of the house. Have they found what's in the walls yet? He asked, and in time they will. The Watcher also asked the family, have you found all the secrets the house holds? The Mr. and Miss Broadus later filed a civil suit against the previous owner, the Woods family, claiming that they had also previously received a letter and knew about the stalker but failed to disclose this information when selling the home, causing them emotional distress. Unfortunately, the case was thrown out by a judge on October 18 of that year. To this day, the identity of the Watcher remains unknown. As of October 2017, the house once again went on the market. Oh,
very disturbing.
very disturbing.
These stories are pretty, it's like, okay, here's another one. In the mid 80s, my mom was a cleaner in Australia. She would clean houses in suburban areas and would sometimes do houses in rural wine regions. We lived near both. She would leave business cards at the local shops and get most of her business that way, some through referrals and word of mouth. So one day she got a call from a lady who sounded like she was around 60, asking mom to clean her old farmhouse. She made a lot of odd demands, and mom would usually meet clients before taking on the business. In this case, the lady did not want to meet her and said she would leave the keys under the front doormat. Well, Mom agreed mainly because the lady was quite obviously wealthy and was offering to pay her substantially more than she would reasonably expect. Mom went to the house on a Monday morning and said she already felt unnerved by the long driveway. The house was essentially in the middle of a very, very large and empty property. She found the keys. She started cleaning. About an hour into the cleaning, she hears the back door shut. Mom was told no one would be at the house, so she immediately felt unsafe. She stood frozen in the kitchen for what she said felt like 3 to 4 minutes, although she said it could have been much longer. There was no other car on the property. She wanted to leave immediately, but had 2 rooms left to do. Both were bathrooms. She said as time passed and she heard nothing else, she decided that perhaps it was nothing, or perhaps something had fallen and it wasn't the door after all. She walked up the hallway and stepped into the bedroom. All over the bed were black and white photos. As she got closer, she realized the photos were all of her. Some were taken at a family home, and many others were taken at other houses that Mom would clean, some through windows or over fences. She used the house phone to call the police and immediately drove to the end of the driveway. The lady ended up being investigated, but continued to claim that it was a break-in. After some time, the police stopped with their searching, and we ended up moving to a new town 4 months later. Every time Mom tells me this story, I get serious chills. Absolutely a true story. And to this day, my mom thinks the lady had something to do with it. But why? For what purpose? That's it.
That's it?
Spooky.
Oh.
Leave you hanging.
Oh. Well, I've got a crazy ex story here. Throw up another creepy picture here. This is the ex-boyfriend from hell.
Oh God, not one of them. No.
This is from the Redditor story from a young lady. It says, I had a high school boyfriend. I split up with him. I was a senior and he was a junior. He was already controlling, judgmental, and abusive.
Hmm.
I was moving on to college at the local university, and he went effing crazy. Lost his damn mind. He began by threatening messages, about 200 a day, phone calls, showing up during my classes, showing up at my house, broke into my car and sat in the back seat. My best friend and I had gone to the movies and came out. I was going to drop her off at home, and she noticed a huge mark on the passenger side of the car. I looked in the back seat, and there he was, laying on the floor, trying to hide. I bought a new car with new plates. He broke into my dorm room. I then left the dorms because I felt unsafe and moved into an apartment not far from the college campus with 2 female roommates. He found out where I was living and broke in there too while I was in the shower. I told him to get the F out, and he came after me with a knife. I had to call the cops and lock myself in the bathroom. He was gone by the time the cops showed up. I was dating a newer guy who was an absolute gentleman, and I warned him about the ex-boyfriend. My ex crashes one of our dates and jumps my new guy with 5 of his friends. I also end up with my face smashed in for being a, what he called, cheating whore. I moved back into my parents' house. Ex-boyfriend attempted to break into my parents' house at 5 o'clock on a Sunday, so my entire family was home. Dad caught him and put a gun in his mouth. So that was the end of that. My dad is a 6'5" ex-military and very scary. Dad did not kill him. However, I think that it scared my ex enough that he has left me alone for 5 years now. I travel back home frequently, and when he sees me, he looks the other way. So that's a stalker story with a good end. All right, I'll go ahead and read another one real quick. Here's one called Why Aren't You Online? Ooh. This happened to me during my first year of university in October. I was living in the dorms and I need to give you a brief rundown of the dorms. You need a key card to gain access to your specific floor. So even though someone on the third floor and fourth floor live in the same building, they cannot access each other's floors. I had injured myself playing sports, so I was under orders to rest, which meant no Halloween parties for me. Pretty sad for a horror fiend like myself, but to try and make the time a happy one, I busied myself helping to make costumes for people and doing their makeup. Once I was finally finished, I packed up my makeup and decided to watch some movies in my room. A guy popped up and introduced himself. We chatted a bit and exchanged email addresses, and I walked back to my room and said goodnight. The first warning sign was that he walked into my room behind me, despite me saying I was going to walk into my own room. I felt really awkward and tried to say in a roundabout way that he needed to leave, but he was not getting the hint. I finally had to say, "You need to leave my room now." I chalked this up to him being drunk or something, maybe, but I did wonder how he got onto my floor if he was not with anyone partying. Before I went to bed that night, I checked my email, and there were five from the creep. The first being, "Hey, I'm so glad we're friends." And then the rest of them asking, "Why aren't you online?" A few days later, I got a knock on my door when I was studying, and it was him. I explained that I was studying and needed privacy. He tried to walk into my room again, but I braced my arm on the frame and said firmly that I needed to study. The next day, he was at my door again, and the next. I began pretending that I was not home. Another day, there was a knock at the door, and when I checked the peephole, there was no one there, and I assumed the postman had come. I opened the door, and lo and behold, it was the creepy guy. He has begun hiding from the peephole, so I would be more likely to answer the door. I told my roommate never to open the door if he was there, and I told the people living on my floor that this guy was beginning to creep me out. So if he wanted to get on the floor, whatever sob story he gave them, do not let him in. A few days after that, I was on the bus coming home and I got a text from someone who lived on my floor telling me not to come home because the creep was on my floor and was sitting in front of my door just waiting. I went to a friend's house and spent the night, and when I got home, I was told he waited 4 hours before leaving. At this point, I was getting freaked out. A few days after that, he began waiting outside the building, and if I left, he would follow me wherever I went. I was too spineless to tell him to go away, and I tried to be more passive about it. I never spoke and never gave any indication I was paying attention, but he followed me to class, the cafeteria, and always tried to follow me home and get access to the floor. I went to the resident advisor and told her what happened. She spoke to the RA for his floor and was told the creep had been telling his own RA that we were best friends and dating. My RA tried to explain that I was uncomfortable, but the other RA believed him, and that was that. Thankfully, one thing did deter him. He would never approach me if I was with a group of people, so my floor mates banded together. If I went to dinner, I went with my floor together, and if I wanted a drink or seconds, someone had to come with me. Walking to class and even waiting for the bus was done in a group. He got onto my floor once when someone else was coming home and forced his foot in the door to let himself in. I was hidden in another room, and when he left my door to go and sit in the television lounge to wait for me, I went downstairs and ran around to the other side of the building and got into my room before he noticed. Then the phone calls began. I never gave him my number, but he somehow obtained my mobile and room phone, and at first it would be 1 to 2 calls a day until I told him I wanted him to leave me alone. Then the calls began coming in every hour with him begging and pleading for me to talk to him. Without caller ID, I needed to answer the phone because of school and my part time job. At this point, it was November and I was a wreck. I was tired of having to plan out doing simple things like going for food and walking to a bus stop. Stress was not helping me recover from my injury, and I was losing weight and just looked sickly. I went back to the RA and begged her to help me. She went to the head of dorms and explained everything that happened. I explained how far this had gone, and my roommate told them that he had followed her a few times, demanding that she tell him where I was. I felt awful. She never told me this because she was afraid of upsetting me further, and I felt like I was an a-hole for putting her through this garbage. I don't know what went on behind closed doors, from what I guess. He was told to leave me alone and any further contact would result in him being kicked out of the dorms. There was one email he sent where he went insane on me, telling me how awful I was. How could I do this to him? We were so happy together. Surely I was cheating on him with other men. After that, nothing. At first, when I'd see him around campus, I would run to the women's toilets to hide. I'd see him around town or on campus, and he'd always just stare at me. He never tried to approach me, never tried to get my attention, just stared. I used to walk by and try to pretend I did not notice him staring, and I'd try and act like my heart was not pounding. Whew. All right. I wonder
All
who's.
left. All right, all left. Yeah, we're telling.
Alt, left, right, insert.
We are telling some stories tonight, folks.
Ooh,
Some creepy stories, but you know what?
why?
Some urban legends could come to life.
Ooh.
This happened a couple of months ago. It's a short story, by the way. It feels hollow to put a catchy title on what happened to me because it freaked me the heck out for a while, but I think it fits in this tonight. So I was driving home from work about 2 a.m. I'm a nurse. I live in a small city. The roads were totally deserted. It was a freezing night. I don't live that far from work, maybe a couple of miles, but I'm driving down a residential street around the corner from my house, and I see a man laying face down in the street. Well, remember, I'm a nurse, so my first thought was, great, gotta help this guy up. I was coming off a long shift, and falls happen all the time, and as I slowed down the car, I suddenly realized what an idiot move that was. I'm a 100-pound woman, and I don't carry any weapons. I thought I should do something to help the guy, so I called 911 as I drove past him and slowed to a stop at the end of the block. When I was stopped at the light, I explained to the dispatcher that there was a man in the road who might need assistance. And all of a sudden, I hear a loud bang, bang from the driver's side window. I screamed and looked over. A man was pounding on my window and jiggling the handle of my locked car. I looked in the rearview mirror and I saw that there was no man laying in the street. Still on the phone with 911, I screamed, I'm so scared, to the dispatcher and floored it through the red light. I quickly told him what had happened, and even though I was right by my house, he told me to keep driving. So after a few minutes, I calmed down and he told me to loop back around, and I pulled over down the road from my house and stayed in the car. I didn't see the man anywhere, so I got off the phone with the dispatcher. He told me he was sending a police car to cruise the area. As I gathered up my things, I do a final scan of the area, and I see the man. He's walking with two other men. So I hunched way down in my car until they were far down the road, then bolted into a house. I don't know if he had ill intent, but it freaks me the hell out that he wasn't alone. Always lock your car doors and carry mace. You never know.
Ooh, mace.
You can get yourself in huge trouble.
Ooh.
Huge trouble.
Well, I got one here, a little short one about some crazy neighbors.
Crazy.
When I first moved into a new place in a new town, I left home one evening and accidentally left my garage door open. Texted husband to tell him so he could go home and close it. He gets there and tells me it's not open. Huh, that's strange, but okay. The next day, I'm taking my trash out, and my neighbor was outside. He introduced himself and told me that the night before he noticed me leaving, and I left my garage door open. So he went inside and closed it and let himself out through the front door, only locking the doorknob lock. Then he sent me a Facebook friend request. I'm assuming he looked at mail on my counter to find out my full name. After this, he wrote me poems and taped them to my door. He left gifts on the front porch, made crazy Facebook posts about a woman he was in love with who was forbidden because I'm married. One Saturday night, I came home really late and I was finishing my cigarette outside of my garage before going in. He was sitting outside in a chair, blistering drunk. He approached me and started talking about someone named George. I had no idea what he was going on about, and confused, I asked him if he had company.
Hmm.
He walked into the garage and came out with a box containing George. George was his stepdad, and he was dead. The ashes were in the box. He caught wind of a trip I was going on via Facebook and invited himself along. I politely explained that I'm married and all of his wacky behavior was unacceptable. A few days later, I had gone on a walk with my husband and we left through the garage, leaving the door open. He messaged me on Facebook and told me he left a gift for me in the garage.
Hmm.
When I got back, I found a bunch of camping gear inside of a giant Easter egg. After I got back from the trip, he showed up at our door at midnight, drunk and banging on the door. That was enough, so we moved. Ooh,
Ooh.
stalkers.
Now, look,
Stalkers everywhere.
stalker. According to the Stalking Resource Center, did you know that there was a Stalking Resource Center?
Yeah, I think I was in that story earlier that I told, that
Seven
long one.
7.5 million people deal with stalking
Ooh,
every year, and
wow.
15% of women have experienced stalking victimization at some point during their lifetime in which they felt very afraid or believed that they or someone close to them would be harmed or killed. So if you or someone you know needs help, please check out the Stalking Resource Center. And if you need immediate assistance, the Victim Connect helpline provides information and referrals for victims of all crime and can be reached at 855 484 2846. So since we're talking about since we're talking about stalking, there's some good resources there if you have indeed
ah,
um,
yeah.
been a victim of such.
Yes.
So I was legitimately stalked my first semester of college. The guy was in my same English class. If I share one that you shared, please tell me. The guy was in my English class. Second or third week, we talked a little after class and found out that we lived in different dorms but in the same complex. Now, the dorms were towers, 17 floors with 35 or so rooms per floor, huge buildings. One day, him and his roommate show up at my door, except I never told him which floor I lived on. So he had to go to each floor and try to find me. He then proceeds to come into my room while my roommate and I are doing work and lays on the floor. Finally, his friend tells him he's being weird and that they should leave. Then he started just sitting outside my dorm room. I'd come back from class and he'd just be there, just sitting, waiting. He'd leave notes on the whiteboard that he just wanted me to read his essay for class. He just wanted to talk to me. Why wouldn't I give him a chance? Maybe because you're weird. And then he started sending me creepy song lyrics over MySpace about how he was going to burn down the dorm to get me to leave my room. I printed those up and got my English teacher involved, a lovely grad student who luckily was my woman's advocate. She got her supervisor involved. My teacher started walking with me to the next class, all the way on the other side of this very large campus. He followed us the whole way, even when we made detours to the bathroom or to get coffee. Finally, the teacher had us write a ode to our favorite study spot. Kind of weird, but whatever. We wrote about sitting outside my door, how he felt powerful when he wrote about sitting outside my door, how he felt powerful when he knew I was trapped inside, and even put my room number and other identifiable stuff in it. That ended up getting turned over to the university. In addition to the song lyrics, there was a whole hearing with myself, my roommate, and some others having to give statements. Unfortunately, they never told me what happened, but he wasn't at school the next semester. The next year, his roommate happened to be in one of my classes. Very first day, he comes to me and says that there's no hard feelings for what you did to my friend. None. No hard feelings.
Ooh,
No hard feelings.
was that it? Ooh.
No hard feelings. Do you have hard feelings?
I don't, but I've got a story. You know, people don't have to be outside your door to stalk you. They can be all across the world.
Oh,
There's
I
this
know.
story.
They can scare the crap out of you. Not even.
Yeah.
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 So, Kevin,
It's, uh-huh.
have you ever been stalked?
Personally, I have not been stalked that I'm aware of.
Well, here's the thing. Now that you are an international, well-known author and collector of haunted dolls, beware.
Well,
Your
that's
fame
why
alone could create problems.
that's why I normally like to pack.
Good thing your daddy take care of you.
Oh gosh. Well, here's
Oh,
this
he's
poor
loaded.
woman. Here's this poor woman that was stalked by a pen pal, an internet pen pal. I've had a couple of stalkers. The one that freaked me out the most was in another country, and we never even met. We met on a website for pen pals. He lived in a different country. Our conversations were great. He developed feelings really, really fast. I liked him very much in the beginning. Our relationship became sexual in nature, so we made plans to meet, etc. I was concerned with some things I considered red flags and confirmed by my friends and family. I decided to back off a bit. He did not like that at all. I was super beta, trying to keep the peace without hurting or losing my friend. I started lying to him out of fear. He'd interrogate me for hours about where I was going, who I was with. If I went to a party, he'd both ask if I slept with anyone and then say he'd kind of hoped I had so I could tell him how the sex was.
Hmm.
It was getting to be too much. I was no longer interested in him romantically or sexually, but I would still engage with him sexually because I was afraid of him. In the meantime, I met and fell in love with my current spouse, who was absolutely wonderful. My stalker was obsessed with everything about our budding relationship and would not leave me be. I realized finally that Stalker made me feel disgusting and that I should not be involved with someone who I was afraid of and disgusted by. I told him that I did not want to hear from him ever again, but he ignored me. My spouse contacted him and told him to leave me alone. He tried to interrogate my spouse about the nature of our relationship, but my spouse shut him down. I blocked him on everything. I realized he was still reading my blog, so I deleted the whole thing. He made new email accounts and Facebook accounts constantly. He relentlessly Googled me and my spouse to the point that our names were amongst the top searches on multiple search engines. When he elicited no response, he started sending my spouse screenshots of times we had been sexual. I was mortified, but since I had been 100% honest with my spouse, it did not break us up. My spouse was obviously incensed and disgusted, but we never reported anything he sent. To my knowledge, he still creeps on us, but after that, everything mostly stopped. I know he's thousands of miles away, and I've had stalkers who were in my immediate area, but he still scares me the most. Ooh,
Scary.
those
When people
scary
think
stuff.
of stalkers, they almost always imagine a dangerously unstable man who is following a female victim. You kind of get that. I think about every story we shared tonight was of a male stalker and mostly female victims. But very few people realize that women can be stalkers too. In most cases, you would never know a female stalker if you saw one. According to the Academy of Psychiatric Law, the vast majority of female stalkers are single, highly educated women who were diagnosed with some kind of mental illness. While some of these cases might seem sort of funny and ridiculous, others are truly terrifying. In some cases, these female stalkers have completely ruined their victims' lives, and some of them even murdered the object of their obsession. So, an Englishman named Peter Cashmore signed up for a dating service app, Tinder. A woman approached him at his local pub, explaining that she recognized him from his pictures on the app. Cashmore believed that this was a coincidence and he did not get creepy vibes from the woman at all, so they ended up sleeping together. It only started to get weird when she said, "I love you," even though they had just met. Cashmere stopped responding to the woman's texts and calls. Instead of taking the hint, she started to follow him down the street while he rode his bike to work and shouted threats at him. This went on every single day. He eventually threatened to call the police. She went home and called the police herself, claiming that he was sexually assaulting her. For months, he had to live with the possibility that he would go to jail for crimes he never committed. He began to feel depressed and drank heavily. His stalker even left him voicemails that admitted to her lies, and she continued to threaten to ruin his life. He brought that evidence to the police, and they just laughed at him and did nothing to help. The police knew that he was innocent, so the charges against him were dropped, but the woman continued to stalk. When he realized that the police were not willing to help, Cashmore eventually had to move far enough away to where she could never find him. It doesn't have to be a male stalker. That female that you met
Yes.
just last week could bring trouble into your
Yeah.
life. Big trouble into your life.
I've got
Be,
a cry.
be,
I've
very,
got a
be
yeah.
very, very careful.
I've got a crazy lady stalker story here.
Yeah, is that a lady stalked you?
No, this is
Oh,
one from
I, I,
online.
I would have loved it.
Not me. No, no.
I would love to hear
I
a
mean,
story.
I have
Somebody,
one here.
somebody stalk Kevin. Let's stalk Kevin. Let's stalk Kevin. That'd be a good book for him. I got stalked. He he's stalked by 300 dolls.
Yeah. Well, here's this one. I dated a guy for about 2 months, and he had an insane
You dated a
ex-girlfriend.
guy
Not
for
me, not me.
sorry.
I am just repeating a story this girl put on the line.
Okay. I just want to make sure.
I, the girl, dated a guy about 2 months, and he had
You're
an
a girl. What?
insane. Oh, son of a bitch. He had an insane ex-girlfriend. She showed up at his house no less than a dozen times over the short period that we dated. They had been going out for a year, and she just got crazier and crazier. Even after we broke up, she continued to stalk me, sending me Facebook messages and texting my phone. I ended up switching numbers and getting rid of my real name online. 5 years later, she gives up stalking me when he gets engaged to a girl and moves out to Texas. And she, of course, moved out to Texas as well. But this time, she lured that fiance into a parking lot of Denny's and stabbed her in the face with a fork.
Ooh.
And that's where it ends. I would have loved to have heard more about that. Stabbed in the face with a fork. See,
You may or I'm sorry.
them ladies can be just as crazy as men.
Oh yeah. You may or may not have seen the 1987 horror film Fatal Attraction.
Oh, yes.
In the film, a woman played by Glenn Close had an affair with a married man played by Michael Douglas. And even though she was aware that he was married all along, she becomes convinced that he should leave his wife for her, and she stalks him. It eventually escalates to violence, and she begins to threaten his wife and child. And even if you've seen the movie, very few people know that Michael Douglas was actually forced to live out the plot of Fatal Attraction in his life. In 2004, a woman named Dawnette Knight claimed that she had had an affair with Michael Douglas and that he paid her to keep it a secret. Knight claimed that she was in love with him and needed to get his wife, Catherine Zeta-Jones, out of the picture. She began stalking Zeta-Jones, and there were 25 separate incidents where Knight threatened her life. She wrote in one of her love letters to Douglas, we're going to slice her up like meat on the bone and feed her to the dogs. Zeta-Jones said that Knight's stalking had her constantly looking over her shoulder, wondering if she would be attacked. She came close to having a nervous breakdown. Knight was finally caught and sentenced to serve 3 years in jail. What stories we have for you tonight, ladies and gentlemen?
Yes.
Are you a victim of stalking? Or wait a minute, maybe you are a stalker. Could it be you that's stalking someone?
Uh-oh.
If you are one that's stalking someone, get a hold of us. We'd like to talk to a stalker because we're looking for one now. We're
I don't know
looking
about that.
him because he needs to be stalked.
Let's stalk the old man over here. He's got more experience.
If you'll private message me, I'll make sure you have
I do
Kevin's
not.
coordinates.
No.
And it's that phone number. That phone number. You can send him crazy text messages.
No, you can't.
Oh,
No.
Kevin, I know what you did last night.
Go ahead. Make my day.
Kevin,
You know what?
I know what color your underwear is.
Yeah, you really need to laugh if you know that.
Kevin, I know you like haunted dogs.
And they're gonna attack you if you. Okay.
Okay, actually, we
mentioned-
don't. We don't want.
No, we don't.
That's that would not be cool. Even though it would be a good storyline for another book for him to write.
Yeah. One of my favorite movies, Clint Eastwood's first movie, was a stalker movie, Play Misty for Me.
Oh yes, that's going back before you were born.
And I've watched it several times where he plays a
What
DJ
year did that
who
come out? In the 70s, right?
1971, I believe.
Yeah, I thought so. You
And
weren't
it
even
was
thought of.
it
You
was
were
the
not
first
even a seed in your dad's sperm.
but it was the first movie Clint Eastwood directed. And he plays a disc jockey who keeps getting phone calls every night by a woman saying, "Play Misty for me."
Yes.
And then she shows up at the bar that he frequents and she starts following him and
Oh yes.
insisting on a romantic relationship. And it
Consisting.
gets violent. Insisting on it. And it gets very violent. His housekeeper gets stabbed and just so forth. And
Yeah, we got go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was just gonna say the writer based this on a true story. She knew a woman who did this to
Okay.
a guy, showed up at his bar, followed him home, all that good stuff. So, but I thought I'd throw that out there. Good movie.
Follow Kevin.
Don't follow me. Play Misty for him. Yeah, right there.
All right, listen. Daniel Broderick was a successful lawyer, and when he started having issues in his marriage, he began having an affair with his office assistant. When his wife Betty found out, they filed for divorce, and she tried to make his life a living hell. Betty spray painted the inside of the house to make it incredibly difficult to sell. And when Daniel moved to a new home, Betty rammed her car into his front door. This is a true story, by the way. Instead of signing the divorce documents, she would write God in the place where Daniel's name should be, and told her children on multiple occasions that she would kill their father. Clearly, Betty Broderick was showing signs of unstable behavior. So it's fairly easy for Daniel to get full custody of the children in 1985.
I remember this.
4 years later, Betty continued to stalk and harass Daniel. She left threatening voicemails, especially when he got married. In 1989, Daniel finally served Betty legal papers to make her stop the harassment. But she stole her daughter's key to Daniel's house and left herself inside. Then she shot and killed Dan and his new wife while they were lying in bed.
I remember
Long
that.
before Jeff Goldblum memes existed on the internet, there was at least one fan that was willing to go to the distance with her obsession in real life. In 2001, a woman named Linda Ransom attended an acting class taught by Goldblum. She followed him home so she could figure out where he lived. When she tried to break into his house, one of Goldblum's security guards had to detain Ransom. That changed her from a stalker with a crush to one who was hell bent on revenge. So, Kevin, you better put that little orange gun away. For over 2 years, Linda Random would show up to Jeff Goldblum's house to scream at the property with threats. So in 2012, Goldblum finally had enough. He filed a restraining order against her. She was 49 years old at the time, and she had to represent herself in court because every single lawyer in Los Angeles refused to take her case. During the court proceedings, she would not stop yelling at everyone. When the judge asked her why she wouldn't leave Goldblum alone, she said, "Mr. Goldblum is being harassed because the legal system is negligently violating my rights." Well, needless to say, the judge granted the restraining order, and there's no more said about that story. We're closing in on the final moments of tonight's show. Kevin has an eerie little picture. Oh, it's gone.
Oh, there you go. There you go. Here's a little picture. That was the female stalker there.
But it would be nice to know if anybody's been stalked out there, and if anybody does want to stalk Kevin, let me know.
No.
I'll make sure you have all his contact information, even though he's easy to find. He's not well hidden at all.
I'll tell you something. I got a lot of scary protection here. You don't want to come across.
Dogs. Stalk my dog.
They're going to stalk you. You stalk me, they stalk you.
I'm a stalker. So Kevin, you never had anybody stalk you. As famous as you
Not that I know. Well,
are, you go
there
around
was
signing books.
there was this one time when I was at their event down in downtown Birmingham. That what's it called? Not the Magic City Con, but the other one.
The one at
And
the
this
hotel, Galleria.
no, that was Magic City. This one was a different one. I can't remember the name. Comic Con.
Oh, you
It
did
was
one.
at
Oh, yeah.
that was at the Civic Center.
BGCC.
And this strange looking character kept walking by and looking in, walking by. She came up, kept looking at my books, kept talking to my dolls, and she kept coming by. I thought, man, have I got me a stalker now? And she finally came over there to the table and just flopped down the chair next to me and scared me to death. And she said, "Hey, my name's Catherine Marie, and my friend Kelsey, and I would love to." I'm just kidding.
That's
No,
probably a true story.
she ain't on here to appreciate that.
That's probably a true story. Yeah. Well, anybody has any stalking stories, and like I said, if you want to be a stalker, there'll be Kevin's stalker training seminars coming out in July, where you can be trained to be an effective stalker. Guaranteed to screw up your life and send you to prison, but you can have fun getting there. Call 888 Learn to Be a Stalker, extension 13. And you too can be an idiot.
You too can be an idiot.
Would you like to be an idiot? We will teach you how to be an idiot. Abnormal, Alabama. We're doing seminars starting July 1st on how to be an idiot. Believe me, Kevin and I have perfected that routine.
Perfecto.
Absolutely. We're on top of that crap. Don't forget, folks, Kevin has a 14th book out now, and he has one that's going to be in hardback form. It's not out yet, but keep in mind that if you get one, that'll be his first hardback book.
Yeah.
He's a very prolific author right here in Central Alabama. Keep in mind that one day Kevin is going to die. At that moment, you'll wish that you had a copy of all his books, because there's nothing that makes things appreciate and value more than the death of the author. I guarantee you, once he's dead, he's not going to write any new books. Well, I don't know with Kevin. He might be sending them from hell.
Yeah, I have heard of ghostwriters, so maybe
he'll publish them from it's called Hell Publishing Company.
Beyond Publishing.
Beyond the NDE Publishing Company. It looks like a gamer's chair.
A gamer's chair, yeah. Well, it was listed as an office/gamer's chair. So, but it's
Did you find it on Amazon, or where'd you find it?
Yeah, it was on Amazon.
Is it very expensive? It looks cool.
It's about what I pay $90 for this, and it reclines back, and it's got a headrest you can put back here. I don't need it. I like laying back like that. But
so this is the desk you work at every day.
Yeah, this is I work in this chair every day. Nice and comfy.
So since the pandemic, you've been a home office boy for a long time. So now, if they called you back, you'd be disappointed, probably.
Well, thankfully, they said that pretty much all of us who have been there a long time know what we're doing. They said we can stay home. So
stay home, make your money. They probably you don't even get a check that just deposit in your bank account, probably.
Yeah. Electronic deposit.
Yeah, you don't really ever have to go anywhere much. You just order on Amazon, get Grubhub.
I get out a little bit, go to the store, or I have to go to the chiropractor.
Did your dad sell his car?
Yeah, he never did get any bites on that. So the listing is taken down right now, and he might put it back up later.
Yeah. Well, I never asked. Everybody, thank you all for joining us. We are now into OT, and next week, what are we going to talk about?
I don't know. I was just thinking about that. I started thinking a few minutes ago about what about nightmares, or did we ever talk about that paralysis thing? I think we
Sleep
did.
paralysis.
Sleep paralysis.
Yeah. I thought about something the other day, and now I'm tired. I can't think of it because we've covered a lot of territory in a little over 3 years now.
Yeah.
So, but even if we got repetitious a little bit, it wouldn't hurt anything.
Yeah.
Anyway, we are already into the coming up on the very middle of March 22.
Yep.
And so we are just trucking right along here. And you can tell that Kevin and I, we're just losing weight. Just amazing how much weight we've lost just sitting here talking about it.
Hey. There we go. Look at that.
We can do what all the girls do now. We can do the fish dip thing. Or
Fish kid. Catfish. That's what the catfish.
catfish, selfie time. Okay. Well, folks, never know what we're going to come up with next week, but I guarantee you one thing: it's going to be fun. And it's going to be abnormal.
Yes, abnormal.
So, all that said, peace and love
Peace.
from the best two guys in Alabama.
Yes.
Well, at least I'm the best. But
Ah.
good night.
Good.